Did Rutgers catch a break with the firing of James Franklin? I don't know, but let's get to it. Okay, so the big news over the weekend in the world of the Big Ten and college football was the firing. Penn State head coach James Franklin, every Penn State hater's favorite coach to hate on. And I have to say, a little bit surprised. Earlier in the day, I did a bit of a video recap of the weekend in Big Ten and Rutgers, and I thought that this really wouldn't happen, at least not right now, because $50 million payout. I guess money does not matter to Penn State and a really strong alumni base. And the world that we live in now, Aaron Glenn has been talking a lot about, the challenges faced by the Jets, and he calls it, and I think Robert Saleh did too, an instant coffee world where everybody expects immediate results. So in a world where you have social media and people clamoring for your job 24/7, and public relations considerations, not to mention results, James Franklin's fired. $50 million buyout. It isn't, it wasn't the roadblock that I thought it might be. I guess that's what happens when you are a program with the status of Penn State. Although I will say, and many criticize them as not being the elite program that they think they are. I mean, they're consistent. They're a top program. But in many ways, they're sort of like Rutgers in that they're at their level and they can't get over their hump, get to their next level. We're looking to get to a Penn State kind of level. They're looking to get to the Alabama, Ohio State kind of level. That being said, let's go through some candidates who might be, and the one that's really obvious to me and that jumped out right away. And oddly enough, not the number one on a lot of lists for prognosticators, but Kurt Cignetti. And here's why. It's less, let's backtrack a little bit. Less than 12 months after Penn State came one possession away from reaching a national championship game. That's how volatile today's world is. If that had happened to Joe Pa back in the day, and he got off to a rough start and he's 3-3, he'd keep his job. And as I said, I thought Franklin wouldn't get fired mid-season, but it's a different world. When you lose 3 straight games, 3 straight Big Ten games, 3 straight games, or 2 straight games against competition that's not very good, that you were 20, 21, 21 and a half point favorites against. No shame in losing to Oregon. That was double overtime, even though Oregon was kind of leading the whole game. And I was like, all right, great, you fired him. Who's going to be your coach? I mean, he won a lot of games. Franklin created a culture. We talk about this a lot at Rutgers, and he did a lot of the, Coach Schiano does a lot of the same things that Franklin does regarding how to go about your business. The results aren't there, the wins aren't there, but building the culture, creating a structure, program building. Not unlike Greg Schiano at all. By the way, some people have mentioned him as a potential coaching candidate. That's not going to happen. Franklin was, a 149 and 104. It's just under 70% win percentage. When he first got there, had to rebuild the program. He had a couple 7-6 seasons. Here's what people have a problem with him. You've heard it. He's 4-21 against top 10 teams. Only 8-7 in bowl games, which I found kind of surprising. If you take away Michigan and Ohio State from the schedule, Franklin is still 3-7 against top 10 competition, despite being favored in 4 of those games. In 15 matchups where both Penn State and the opponents are ranked within the top 10, he's 3-12. He's 28-3 against Rutgers, Indiana, and Maryland in the Big Ten, and then 37-34 against everybody else. So in many ways, kind of like what we have going on with Rutgers and Greg Schiano, only they're doing it at a higher level. And I attribute that, to Penn State's kind of stodgy offense. They want to run the ball. That's fine. Singletary not having the year you thought he might have, but that might be a coaching thing. They want to throw it down. They want to play physically on offense like they do on defense, and the defense is usually very good. Now, their quarterback development, which might have also played into this with Drew Allar not taking the next step this year and then getting hurt and being out the rest of the year. So when you think about Sean Clifford, when you think about Trace McSorley, when you think about Christian Hackenberg, sorry, New York Jets, their quarterbacks just don't develop. So you can see when you're at Penn State's level, they're looking to get to the next level, and they'll make the commitment, the financial commitment, and they'll commit to making change to get to that next level. Despite all of that, what we just said, historically, we're 2-32 against Penn State. And we haven't won again since 1988. 37 years in a series that started in 1918, I believe. Franklin is 8-0 against us. He's outscored us 295-55, 240-point differential, including 55-10 a few years ago, 2022. And, with our luck, Penn State, they make the coaching change. Maybe they fire some more coaches and they go on a UCLA kind of run. We know all of a sudden UCLA beats Penn State and destroys Michigan State. Nico Lamalieva is reborn. So hopefully we don't run into that. A lot of people are thinking right now, okay, we have our best chance to beat Penn State. Yeah, I won't believe it till I see it. So they need to be on the phone with Kirk Cignetti. Indiana is where Penn State is at. They're number 3. Penn State preseason, a lot of people had as the national champ. This was going to be the year. Experienced roster. Drew Aller taking the next step. But Indiana's in their spot. Indiana should be number 2. Miami's overrated. I'm just sorry they are. It's not the 1980s and 90s Miami. They're good. They had a 27-24 win against Notre Dame early. But Indiana is there, and they're there in the Big Ten in 2 years. Kirk Cignetti has gotten Indiana to the place that Penn State wants to be. Knocking on the door of a national championship, beating Oregon, by the way, by 10 points. Cignetti's from Pittsburgh, so he knows the landscape, understands the territory, wins at every level. Elon, James Madison, Indiana's James Madison West with all their transfers. And he does it without a collection of 5-star recruits. If you're looking for a get over the hump, win now kind of guy, he is the perfect candidate from that standpoint. He coaches offense, which you don't really have with Penn State now, unless you can physically outmatch a team. Coach's defense, they, against Oregon, they got to, I want to say Oregon maybe had one sack all year, and then they go up against Indiana and pressured all day. More dynamic offense than Penn State. So he's the right fit for what you want to do philosophically, what you need to do from your program building standpoint. But there's a couple downsides. I mean, he makes, $8.5 million, which is, I think if he were to go to Penn State, he would probably get 50, 60, 70% more, or even more, maybe double that. But here's a couple of things. People say that the talking heads say, well, he's comfortable there. He can be successful there and not have to deal with the microscope and the fishbowl that's Penn State football. Because Penn State's all about football. Yeah, they're great at wrestling. Basketball is good every once in a while. But football drives the bus there. So maybe some people think he'd be crazy to leave Indiana. Just stay there, be successful, make your money, build the program. Has Mark Cuban funding. And he's got a $10 million buyout. So, but I don't think if Penn State's going to pay Franklin $50 million, they'll certainly pay his $10 million buyout. The other thing is Signetti's 64. 64 is probably like the new 55 or 50. That's not old these days, especially when you consider how good he's been. But if you want a younger guy to retool your program for the next 10 to 12 to 15 years going forward, Signetti's probably not your guy. If you can live with a 4 or 5 year window where you think he's going to get you over the hump, he'll probably be worth 13, 14, 15 million that you pay him. But another guy that's getting a lot of consideration is Matt Rhule. And a lot of people see this as the obvious choice. There's some ties there. I don't know. I think the sample size is at Nebraska isn't quite what it should be. I don't know, if the rebuilding of Temple and Baylor would be the same or equal to rebuilding a Nebraska program, which is more like a Big Ten and Penn State and Temple and Baylor. He's taken over some tough situations, some bad programs. Art Briles scandal at Baylor. We went from, when we talk about Rutgers, Matt Rhule went from 1-11 to 11-3 in 3 years. And Baylor did a good job at Temple, rebuilding them, but Penn State isn't in rebuild mode. It's in retool and project forward, get over the hump mode. But Matt Rhule recruits well. No, Nebraska's not really, it's kind of a rebuild, but not really. They thought Scott Frost was the answer, but all you really need to do is win some games. And then you'll start having bigger. I mean, he has some recruiting success. He's in the mid-20s, around Not quite what Penn State gets, but he's doing well. But if he gets some wins, he's ranked in the top 10, top 15, it's going to come to him. But nonetheless, recruits well, grew up in State College, Penn State grad, walk-on linebacker under Joe Pa. But here's the thing. He's kind of like, this could be a sideways move. Do you really want to go through all the drama and the payouts and taking a chance if you're just going to be the same kind of team going forward? You know, he's Matt Rhule, 17-14 in Nebraska. Steady progress, 5-7, 7-6. They're 5-1 this year. Franklin, 15-31 against top 25 opponents. 4-21 against top 10 and 4-17 against Michigan and Ohio State. So Matt Rhule better be able to beat Michigan or Ohio State if he wants to keep his job and be successful. And Matt Rhule has had the same kind of issues. You know, at Temple, Baylor, and Nebraska, he's 2-23 against ranked opponents and 0-11 versus the top 10, albeit he was never the favorite in these games. And he's rebuilding programs. So overpaying for James Franklin mini-me or clone is kind of unwise in my book. But, you know, if Matt Rhule gets, you know, top 5, top 8, top 10 resources, can he be one of those guys that grows into it, ups his game, and gets to that next level? You know, he's the right age. He's 50 years old. He has time. He has a relationship with Penn State AD Patrick Kraft, worked together at Temple, and apparently there's a great relationship and fondness between the two of them, so that certainly helps. But we'll see. I think there's not a lot of difference between the two. Like if you told me, you know, Nick Saban was coming back, all right, you know, yeah, he'll get you over the hump. With that talent, he probably has 3 or 4 national championships still in him. But there are some other candidates. And another one is Mike Elko, head coach, Texas A&M, right now, ranked number 4. Outstanding defense, good offense. You know, he was 16-9 at Duke and was coming off a 7-6 season after previously being 9-4 before going to Texas A&M. So Texas A&M kind of took a chance on a guy that didn't have an elite resume, but it turned out pretty well for them. And being from that part of the country, he's from New Jersey, South Brunswick, I want to say, went to Penn, University of Pennsylvania. But he's kind of in the same boat as Cignetti in that he's in a pretty good situation. And he's kind of comfortable. And apparently his family likes where they are in College Station. So, and he can fly under the radar at Texas A&M, and even though they have a really strong alumni base, it's not like being at Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Penn State, or even Texas. So we'll see about that. Another guy a lot of people talking about, Matt Campbell. You know, a few years ago, he was everybody's hot candidate to be at the next big elite coaching job. You know, he was hired at 36. He was the upper-comer. His best year was last year, 11-3. Big 12 championship game. Number 15 in the final poll last year. It's 35-15 in the MAC with Toledo. Coach of the year twice. 10 bowl games. but not really an elite resume. He had he beat Miami 42-41, and he popped on its bowl last year. And he's a nice hire, but again, I don't think it's that next step elite kind of hire that will get you to the next level. He'd be good with Penn State talent and budget. He'd be really good. But they lost to Colorado last week, so I don't know how that would sit with Penn State fans. Nonetheless, another guy that surprisingly is getting attention, and Rutgers fans will not like this, and I thought it was crazy, and that's Fran Brown. Too small a sample size at Syracuse, 13-6, 3-3 this year. He had a good year last year, 10-3. No really elite wins. Guy from New Jersey, good recruiter, good talker. But I feel his head coach resume is incomplete right now. And I'd hate to see him go to Penn State, quite frankly. Can he be Aaron Glenn and talk his way into the position and say, hey, this job is for me. I got this? Perhaps. But unless he runs off 6 or 7 in a row, goes 10-3, 9-4 again, and gets a bowl win against a top 10, 12, 15 team, I'm going to say no. And another guy that a lot of people talking about, Manny Diaz. 13-6 at Duke, following Mike Elko, who kind of set the program up. After taking the job at Temple, he pulled a Belichick and bolted for Miami. He's from that area, and you can't begrudge him that, but it kind of came off badly. Nonetheless, he was 21-15 in 3 years. He was fired. A lot of people like Diaz, but I think he's one of those guys that's a really good defensive coordinator and has done really well on that side of the ball, no matter where he's gone. But it remains to be seen if he can be a head coach. And Penn State needs help on offense, not so much on defense. Penn State has big expectations, and they need to get the offense going. So I'm not even sure about that. Some others on the long list. Vanderbilt, Clark Lee, who's done some pretty good work. Being at Vanderbilt's not easy. Only 43, has that going for him. Working at those academic institutions, 5-1 this year. Went to a bowl game last year. But, no. Do you want to go down the James Franklin road again? I don't think so. Here's another under the radar one that people love, and it's Ed Drinkowitz from Missouri. Another young guy, 42, so that kind of works. Made a bit of a splash at Missouri. He's got a couple 10-game seasons. He SEC Coach of the Year a couple of years ago. He went 11-2 with a win against Ohio State. So, in the Cotton Bowl. But I just don't feel that it's a really nice hire, but I don't think it's the big hire that Penn State is looking for. And who knows? Maybe, Penn State's got a conventional wisdom, great job. A lot of people want, but maybe guys are like, I don't know if I want to do that. So you might have to, like Alabama, you might have to take your third or fourth choice. We'll see what happens there. Another guy people talking about, Alex Golish. Another young guy, 41 years old, but it's South Florida. So you can do really well there and do a good job. But the South Florida marketplace and then making the jump to the Big Ten and Penn State is a whole nother ball of wax. He does have victories over Florida and Boise State, who probably ranked at the time. If you're looking for the guy that's the coordinator that potentially can make the next step up Will Stein, Oregon's offensive coordinator. I mean, you don't have to say much more. He became a coordinator at 36 years old, and being at a good program led by Dan Lanning, he might be ready to take the next step. This is a big next step. And he's led one of the, year in and year out, one of the top offenses. So it might be a fit that way. And that might be sort of an under the radar guy that maybe the Penn State administration really likes. It's just that people don't know it yet. So we'll see what happens there. And another guy people talking about, Penn State grad in the NFL, and that's Joe Brady, Buffalo Bills. He was a graduate assistant at Penn State. And he, I guess when you got Josh Allen, that makes things a lot easier. He did help LSU to a national title. Didn't work out his first time around in the NFL. But he's doing well with Buffalo now, and he's another guy that's still young. So, maybe down the road after he has his run with Buffalo, he'll return to the coaching ranks and maybe get a head coaching job in college. And who knows, maybe one day down the road, it will even be at Penn State. But another guy that surprisingly to me, and I get why he's always on people's lists, but I just don't see it as a cultural fit, and that's Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. A lot of prognosticators have him on the short list. I think at Ole Miss, you're not Alabama, you're not Georgia, you're not LSU. But if you go 10-2 every year, that's really good, and you get paid big bucks. I mean, he makes. Does he make that? He might make $13 million. So he'd have to make even more at Penn State, and I'm not sure that that's the kind of guy Penn State would look for. Nonetheless, whoever it is, it remains to be seen if Rutgers will match up regardless. When you have that history and you have a culture of winning that's been going for you for generations, and no, it's not NIL. Well, Fonseca. So Coach has his Oregon pregame press conference today, and Fonseca, the first question, of course, these young guys like Fonseca have NIL derangement syndrome. And Coach was absolutely right today on a couple observations, and Politi too. Just hit your field goal. Don't commit the penalty at the wrong time. Complete the pass when you have to, and you win the game. NIL doesn't matter. Coach says what happens when you're in season now, what's happening now is what's the best practices now is figuring out what you have injury-wise and how to deploy your players, put them in positions to succeed, equipping them and inspiring them. And that's exactly right. It's not about NIL. If you're committing a holding penalty on a first down run, that has nothing to do with NIL. It's blocking, tackling, catching, and kicking. Coach went on to say that they had the most violent game this past week against Washington. They got after it. And early on, it kind of looked like that. And Coach is like, right now, where we are, we're going to put them in there, put them in their positions, and let them play free. Right? Don't get them thinking about too much and not being able to make the play. And I absolutely, positively agree with that. And he also went on to say, we don't want to get it caught up at what he called a vicious game right now about what you have and what you don't have. And I absolutely agree with that. The bottom line is you have to go out against Oregon you're going to have to make some plays. Somebody's got to make a play, offense and defense. Has nothing to do with NIL. They have a 5'11" quarterback last week that wasn't necessarily a super high recruit, and he ran all over us. Just make containment, make a play. So Coach made the point that there's always been the haves and have-nots. Michigan and Ohio State were good when I was a kid, which is why they're able to get players now. You just got to win some games. You win some games, you build up some momentum, recruiting a momentum, and now with NIL, Coach said it has narrowed the gap a little bit, because before you would just have the Michigans, Ohio States, Alabamas were always going to be good. But now if you have some NIL monies where people in the middle, people at the bottom can make some inroads, that's kind of narrowed the gap a little bit. But if you're good, you're good. All those teams, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Alabama, Georgia, they were all good before NIL. So let's go out and win some games. We'll see what happens with Penn State's hire. It'll be something that we can watch and talk about, and we'll have an Oregon preview coming up. Everybody enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you the next time.